Music of the Year 2001. Alright, sorry about the vague title for this one. I know, pop rock, that covers so fucking much, right? This is because there were a lot of releases that I listened to that I couldn't quite think of where else to put them. This is because I'm gonna have an alternative rock section and I just don't want it to be like fucking 40 albums long. This is the type of music that gets labeled alternative rock, but there's nothing really left at the dial about any of these acts. I consider it something of a movement that lasted from the mid-90s to about the mid-2000s before the butt rockers and Radiohead wannabes completely took over. You know, your Hootie and the Blowfish, Matchbox 20, Goo Goo Dolls type of stuff. A lot of people call it kind of like jangle rock in a way. I like to call it soccer mom rock. I'm willing to bet you that you Zoomers, your parents had at least one of these albums in their collection. And if they did, tell me about it in the comments, and especially let me know if it brought up some traumatic memories. Most of these reviews are going to be quite middling and critical, so don't expect too many positive comments coming out of my mouth for this one. And again, I would like to remind everyone that if this music does it for you, if you like this type of stuff, that's fine. We're all allowed to have our opinions. Drops of Jupiter, Train. Oh man, was I dreading listening to this one, given the reputation that Train has built up over the years. Luckily, this is before vocalist Pat Monahan went completely off the rails. Unfortunately, it's also before Pat Monahan went completely off the rails. You're not gonna find any lyrics that talk about drive-bys and hefty bags, but what you are gonna get is pretty boring soccer mom rock. Most of this thing is a snoozer. Except for that title track. Man, can we just talk about that title track? The compositions, the swelling strings, oh my god, it's so beautifully produced. In the lyrics, even though Monahan has never made it clear what he's talking about, they're just so touching no matter how it speaks to you. Just, mwah, chef's kiss, I love that song. Sadly, you can't say the quality carries on for the rest of the album. See. Spirit Room, Michelle Branch. This thing is only really on my list because my dad really liked this album. I remember going on road trips, and he'd have this thing on repeat for about 3 to 4 albums before switching it to Savage Garden. So I guess you could say that this album was everywhere to me. Huh? This is actually not too horrible as what you expect from a pop album, although I will say that Michelle Branch has some pipes on her. It just sucks that the music doesn't do anything all too interesting except for the hooks on some of the big pop hits. Good luck getting most of these songs that you forgot existed out of your head now. That's about all I can say about it. C+. Room for Squares, John Mayer. You know, for as amazing of a guitarist as John Mayer is, you'd think he would have it in him to make more interesting music. I mean, eventually he would, but that wasn't the type of stuff he was spitting out in 2001. Yeah, that's right, this is the 2001 album. I'm sure most of you guys probably thought it was an '02 album, given that most of the songs became big in '02. It wasn't even a late 2001 release. This was like summer 2001. You would expect the songs to start exploding towards the end of the year, not literally the middle of the next year. And you know why that is because John Mayer actually used the internet to promote himself in very intelligent ways, predating acts like the Arctic Monkeys, and yet nobody gives Mayer any credit for that. Yeah, that's pretty cool to talk about, right? Like, lots of interesting facts to state. You know why? Because there's nothing else interesting about this fucking album. John Mayer sings like a cat trying to cough up a hairball for about 55 minutes on this. And yeah, the acoustic guitar playing is pretty alright, and it's cool to hear him show off, but come on, you gotta do something more than just show off a little bit. Don't get me wrong, songs like Why Georgia and My Stupid Mouth are undeniably pretty good. Otherwise, it just sounds like Dave Matthews wannabe music. C. Goddess in the Doorway, Mick Jagger. Rolling Stone, #1 album of the year. This thing. I want you guys to do me a favor. I want you to pause this video. I want you to just look up about 2 or 3 different best albums of the 2000s, or even just best albums of 2001 lists, without clicking on the Rolling Stone one for 2001. And just, Control F, and type in the name of this album and see if it pops up. No? No, didn't pop up at all, right? Nobody fucking remembers this thing, and for good reason. Not even Rolling Stone in hindsight's willing to back this thing up. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like the worst album ever created, but for something that's supposed to be hyped up as the best of the year, you expect at least a little bit more quality. What this is Mick Jagger trying to do middle-of-the-road pop rock, and that stuff's okay. But what's not okay are the tracks where he's trying to play up the modern trends. We're talking electronic beats, some little attempts at hip-hop here and there. He's basically the how do you do fellow kids of 2001. And I'm not saying that boomers can't occasionally pull this stuff off. Look at what David Bowie did, for instance. However, Jagger's never really been all that great at carrying stuff on his own. He's always had to have the Stones backing him up, which is why this album has so many guest appearances from Rob Thomas to Bono and even freaking Pete Townsend, whose talents are easily wasted on this album. Again, it's not the worst thing, it's just something that's frustrating and making me wish that Rolling Stone would just go back on it and say, no, we were deep-throating boomer rock stars back then, don't take our word for it, this thing's just okay. C-. Camino Palmero, The Calling. This is another one that's only on here because I owned it as a kid. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are like, wait, who? The Calling were a one-hit wonder band. Basically, just shortly after 9/11, they wrote a song called Wherever You Will Go. Everyone thought it was touching, and this album sold like hotcakes. And then they disappeared off the face of the earth because, one-hit wonder. I owned this thing because as a kid, I was going through puberty and my voice was getting lower and I couldn't match the notes of all of those bands with their shrieking high vocalists anymore. And I needed something to sing that was much more in my developing register. That being said, Alex Band's got an amazing, angelic fucking voice. I gotta give the man some credits. Sadly, his voice is being used to sing some of the sappiest, most saccharine shit you've ever heard in your life. Could it be any harder to live my life without you? And man, does the guy over-sing in some places. I mean, yeah, I know I just praised his voice, but any voice that's being overexerted isn't gonna sound pleasant. Just over-dramatic, sappy, calm down, bro. It's not that serious. Now, I will give the album this much credit. There's a song on there called Stigmatized. It was written about two gay lovers that, are being stigmatized by society. And it's actually perfectly well composed and written and sung. And it's just this bright spot in an otherwise really fucking dull sounding album. Seriously, give that thing a listen. It's actually aged like fine fucking wine. Otherwise, just skip the rest of it. Easy C-. Every Day, Dave Matthews Band. Originally I was going to skip this, and then I saw multiple videos actually mention this album and the fact that a lot of people were fucking disappointed by it. I mean, raging, foaming at the mouth type of stuff. So I had to pop this thing in and give it a listen since so many people felt the need to mention it. And the first two tracks had me fucking worried. Dave Matthews takes on this weird rough and gruff grunge sort of tone. And if you've seen Dave Matthews, you know that man does not look threatening at all. He's basically trying to pull off this vibrato that he doesn't fucking have. And that's okay, you don't have to be aggressive to be good. Now, fortunately, if you actually look at the scores of the reviews of this album, as much as people stated it was disappointing, it gets no lower than like a 4 out of 10 for most reviewers. And the reason why is because it's just really those first two tracks. Everything else is, well, have you listened to a Dave Matthews album? Because that's what it is. Harmless soccer mom rock. Now, I also want to mention that obviously Dave Matthews is still very well liked for his 90s output, his live material, and especially the bootlegs that he spits out every now and then. So that being said, I can't get too mad at it. But I will say this much, that closing track, which is the title track, is pretty fucking good. Yeah, I know it's this simplistic song, but really that's all it needs to be. It's about, giving love to your fellow man, and honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. Especially if you watch the music video. The music video, you're gonna put this big, stupid smile on your face. I guarantee it. Just pause this video and watch that music video if you haven't seen it before. Every Day by Dave Matthews. Otherwise, it's a C-level album. Rockin' the Suburbs, Ben Folds. No, not Ben Folds 5, just Ben Folds on his own. Good old Benny Boy on his own. And no, I don't mean Ben from Oddity Archive, I know everyone calls him Benny Boy too. So, fun fact, Trey, the person who used to make videos with me on this channel, is actually a huge fan of Ben Folds and considers him to be one of his all-time favorites. And after listening to this, I can easily see why. These are some gorgeously written songs and some really tug-at-your-heartstring moments. And his piano prowess is just top tier. Not to mention that title track, when it comes up, you don't expect somebody as soft-spoken as Ben Folds to start dropping F-bombs on you. I really liked this album, and I highly recommend those of you that want to get into Ben Folds, this is probably a good place to start. A-. Yeah, I'm sure you weren't expecting an A- and a C of C's. Well, that about does it for this one. Join me next time when I get to cover a slew of albums that fit the umbrella term alternative rock. See ya later.